Today on Retire with Purpose, what makes buckets so important to your retirement strategy? Is there really such a thing as guaranteed retirement income and the retirement spending smile?
Are you prepared to retire with purpose? To retire knowing your savings is invested to meet unavoidable needs and expenses.
It's not how much we make during the good times, it's how much we keep during those really bad times.
Certified financial planner Casey Weade is president of Howard Bailey, an advisory firm that believes successful retirement begins with a detailed financial plan personalized to help achieve your life's purpose.
Whatever risk you face, we've got a plan.
The Howard Bailey team is committed to practical financial planning so you can enjoy family and the future without uncertainty or stress. Stay tuned and learn how you too can retire with purpose.
Good to see you. Thanks for joining us. I am Lee Kelso here with Casey Weade. He is the president of Howard Bailey Financial and a certified financial planner. You know, Casey, it seems like we talk about buckets a lot in retirement. You've got your bucket list that you want to accomplish before you kick the bucket. So now we're going to talk about a bucket saving strategy.
That's right. We're going to be discussing an article from U.S. News and World Reports regarding the pros and cons of a bucket saving strategy. And I think we might more appropriately call this a bucketed income strategy, because it's not really about saving and accumulating, but reshaping those strategies and setting them up in such a way that can deliver a consistent and reliable income.
And this is all part of Casey's weekend reading for retirees and pre-retirees. 4 articles that come to your email box once a week, no spam. It's really easy to do. Just go to retirewithpurpose.com and you'll see where you can request to join that list. So what is it? Let's talk about this, the bucket. You said savings or income strategy.
Yeah, really it's just this idea that's been used by financial advisors, specifically retirement planners, for many years. You know, easily over the last 10 to 15 years, this has become more and more prevalent as we've had more and more retirees stepping into retirement and looking for a strategy that can give them a little bit more confidence to know they're going to have income regardless of what the market does. And it's really just this. We break it apart into 3 separate buckets, which would be bucket number 1 is going to be your short-term income needs, bucket number 2, midterm, number 3, long-term or longevity income needs. And typically, you would set that first leg of income up as somewhere between 2 to 10 years worth of income needs set aside in a conservative or guaranteed place. If it's 1 or 2 years you're setting aside, then it might be money market, it might be savings, it might be laddered CDs for that matter. If it's 5 or 10 years, maybe it's a fixed annuity or an immediate annuity or some type of guaranteed income that's going to be provided for the next 10 years. And then you've got leg number 2, something you don't now need to touch for the next 10 years because leg number 1 is going to take care of that. And this could be more moderately allocated, your traditional balanced allocation. Maybe you've got some fixed income combined with some equities. And then lastly, you've got funds that you don't need to touch for the next 20 years. And so you've essentially bought yourself time to invest in some more aggressive positions without putting your retirement at risk. And now that last bucket might be 100% equities, international equities, small cap equities, something that's more aggressive that you would have invested in if you were, say, 30 years old instead of 50 years old. And now you've created that bucket that's kind of like your 30-year-old bucket that you're not going to touch for the next 20 years.
Yeah, so it really alleviates that confusion about where to take money from when you need it. Is that what makes it important?
Exactly. I think the biggest benefit, and the article talks about the biggest pros and cons of the bucketed savings or income strategy, and I think they really hit it on the head when they said the biggest benefit was just psychology and peace of mind, as they said it. And I like to say this as behavioral investment psychology, the way that we're actually going to react when we get the worst. And if we just dump everything into this one big investment portfolio that's made up of mutual funds or stocks, bonds, ETFs, the traditional method is to just shave a little bit of income off each one of those individual positions, or maybe we're just spending the dividends for that matter. But when we get the worst, when we have a bad year, now now you're looking at this one portfolio that's now down 20%, it's down 30%, it's down 50% for that matter, and now you end up panicking at that moment and really violating the #1 rule of retirement. We're supposed to buy low and sell high, and now you've done the opposite. You've started to take distributions while positions are down, so you violated sequence of investment returns risk, and the strategy is also giving you better protection for longevity because you actually have a plan. You have some funds that have been set aside specifically not to touch for an extended period of time. But again, I think most importantly, the biggest benefit is just psychology, because now you're buying yourself time, so you don't panic if we get the worst. You have set aside some funds that you know are going to be there to take care of your expenses, even if the leg #2 or bucket #3 is down 20% or 40%. You go, that's okay, just like you did during your working years. I don't need that for 5 years, or I don't need that for 20 years.
So I could hear somebody saying, though, if I'm going to take some money and put it into a liquid source like just a bank account from that short-term money, doesn't that affect my overall return?
Right. Well, and the article also outlined that the second biggest pro is that you could end up seeing a substantially higher level of return with this strategy, because it allows an investor, or especially a retiree, to take on more risk than they probably traditionally would, because they've got a backstop in place. They've got that first leg of income taken care of, 5, 10 years. In our office, we like to set aside 10 years of income needs, typically 5 to 10 years, usually 10 years set aside to buy us time to invest in higher risk asset classes. And since now we've kind of taken the behavior out of it and the risk out of it to the degree that we're going to panic, now we can let those things go through the ups and downs and don't let our psychology ultimately dampen our returns. This allows us to invest more aggressively with greater peace of mind so that we don't panic, and studies have shown that it typically leads to higher long-term returns as a result.
I get it. Okay. So those all sound like really great things, but there has to be a downside here. There's some risk involved, right?
Yeah, sure. There's always a risk and a downside to any strategy that you use. And I think with this particular strategy, it's difficult for do-it-yourselfers to put in place, especially for that first leg of income. We'll use a tool that allows us to get 10 years of guaranteed income that gives us returns of 3 to 5%. It's kind of hard for your average CD investor to find those types of tools. And so, and I think furthermore is this risk of rebalancing, right? We not only have to have the right tools in place and the right benchmarks for return in each one of those buckets. We need bucket #1 to make 3% on average next 10 years, bucket 2, 5, bucket 3, 7, 8%. And we have to set the right investment returns aside in each one of those individual buckets in order to make sure that we ultimately get to where we want to get to in the long run. And we have to ongoingly just manage this system and rebalance, move some funds from bucket #2 to bucket #1, bucket #3 to bucket #2. It has to be it has to be rebalanced on an ongoing basis. And if we don't do that, the whole plan can get out of whack. This is why we sit down with our clients and go through quarterly reviews if they're on a bucketed strategy, so we can do the appropriate rebalancing when necessary.
And it also seems that it's going to be awfully important that I walk into this understanding very clearly what are my expenses, that I've done good budgeting, right? Because I've got to know how much to put into each bucket.
Well, I think with any investment strategy, especially retirement strategy, I think more importantly, we have to understand our expenses. If we don't have a good budget, I mean, you're stepping into a fixed income period where you don't have the ability to just slap it on a credit card or put it on a home equity line of credit and then put in some overtime. Now you can't put in overtime anymore. So you have to make sure you really isolate your expenses, know your budget, and start to work within that budget so that you don't overspend. And it doesn't matter what strategy it is, but it is really important with the bucketed savings strategy or income strategy, because if we get it wrong, let's say we say, well, we're going to need $50,000 a year as we step into retirement. Well, we might set $500,000 aside in that first leg of income to take care of the next 10 years of income. And when you did that, you stepped into retirement. Now all of a sudden you say, well, I guess I'm only spending $30,000 a year. Well, now we've got an extra $200,000 sitting in a low yielding investment that could have been yielding a higher rate of return had we done a better job of understanding our expenses. And that's why it's arguably more important to understand your expenses when it comes to the bucketed approach. But I think no matter what, when you walk into a financial advisor's office, you better better understand what your expenses are before you walk in, because there's nothing more important. And if you get that wrong, let's say you say, well, I spend $3,000 a month, but you really spend $4,000 a month. Well, that advisor might say, well, now you can retire. But it's because they had bad information to start with that could ultimately put you back to work someday.
Yeah, let's take a step to make sure that you're not in that boat. And I think the first most important step is to call the number on your screen right now and request a complimentary review of exactly what's going on in your portfolio. It's a chance to take a look at exactly how well prepared are you for retirement, and it's a no judgment kind of meeting. We're just going to take a look at exactly what's happening in your existing portfolio. Are there taxes and fees you're paying that you could legally avoid? Do you have a strategy for income that you cannot outlive? And what are you doing? Is there an opportunity for you now to plan for long-term health care? And if you haven't, what should you be thinking about? All very important questions that will affect the outcome of your retirement. So that's why I hope you're one of the next 10 people to call the number on your screen and request this complimentary retirement review with a member of the Howard Bailey team. It's a great first step toward retiring with purpose. We are back in just a second answering your questions, so stay tuned.
At Howard Bailey Financial, every dollar has a purpose. We call it the purpose-based retirement. A certified financial planner will help you decide what you need your retirement money to do for you. We put together a written plan that puts your dollars exactly where you want them to be. And we put every dollar to work to maximize your retirement efficiency. For a higher level of insight and care, choose the purpose-based retirement from Howard Bailey Financial. Call us now to set a complimentary consultation.
Welcome back. It's that time in the program when we answer your questions. So let's see, Casey, first up is Wayne and Tina from Huntington.
Casey, we meet with our financial advisor every year or two. How often do you feel we should meet with him, and what are the purpose of these meetings?
Hey, thank you for the question, Wayne, Tina. I kind of explain this to the families we work with first by identifying, how often we should be meeting in order to review their strategy, and it depends on the risk level that you're taking. I've got families that I work with that have everything at risk, other families that have everything in safety and fixed rate guarantees for that matter. I've got a gentleman from Arizona, for instance, that he's got $3 million saved for retirement. And he said, Casey, if I get 3% per year for the rest of my life, I'll have more income than I know what to do with. Just protect my principal. I know I could take the risk, but I don't want to. Just give me a guaranteed fixed rate and I'll sleep well at night. And so for him, there's not a lot of action going on. There's not a lot of changes that need to be made on a regular basis. And so we'll sit down once a year and have a discussion. And those discussions will really be based around one, how's life? How do you feel? How well are you sleeping at night? I think that's the most important thing, is how confident are you in your investment strategy? And then number two, sitting down and actually reviewing any major life changes, because those pivotal moments, those major changes, whether it's retirement or whether it's the loss of a spouse, loss of a loved one, an inheritance, a major move or job loss, whatever it might be, those things need to be covered, because that's typically when major financial changes need to happen. And also reviewing tax returns, reviewing the tax strategy to see, with the changes that have happened in, say, this year, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, with those changes, do we need to change anything on the tax strategy? And then lastly, evaluating the investment strategy. I think most meetings with financial advisors start with evaluating the investment strategy, and I think that's backwards. We need to first identify what's going on in your life, how confident you are, how happy you are, and then get to the investment strategy and start to manipulate or reorganize that strategy to give you greater confidence and feel more fulfilled in your retirement, or on your way to retirement, having greater confidence that you're actually going to get there, for that matter. Now, at the other end of the spectrum, we've got families we work with that have everything at risk. I've got a 78-year-old retired school principal that lives off his pension. And he said, Casey, I don't need any of this money. It's ultimately going to my kids, and he doesn't need to spend any of it. He doesn't need it for income. He said, so really, I might be 78 years old, but the people that are ultimately going to get these funds are 30, 40 years old, so they've got a long time horizon, and so I want 100% of these assets aggressively invested at risk. And that's somebody we sit down with every 3 months, because there's more likely changes that are going to need to be evaluated and made on an ongoing basis. So it depends on which side of the risk spectrum that you're actually on, and then then ultimately having some really meaningful conversations with your advisor is the bottom line.
Not a one-size-fits-all approach, yeah. Let's get up to Angola and Beverly.
My neighbor says they have a guaranteed income from their advisor, but we all know there's no such thing as a guarantee in the investment world. Should they be worried?
Well, Beverly, like you said, there's no such guarantee as a guarantee in the investment world. There's very few guarantees in life. I think we often say, what are the two guarantees, Lee, in life?
Death and taxes.
Death and taxes, right? There's really only two. And, and I think that's an important point. We need to plan around those things that we actually know are going to occur. And those are often the most ignored things in a financial plan are death and taxes. And those are the things where we can actually receive some real guarantees. Same thing goes for fees and expenses. Reduce your fees and expenses, guaranteed to put more money back in your pocket. So there are some things that we can get guarantees on. Investments aren't one of them. And so when it comes to getting a guaranteed income, yes, that's a thing. It's often discussed and talked about in the investment world, specifically the retirement planning world. Recently had Dr. Weade on the Retire with Purpose podcast, and he discussed how important it is for a retiree to have some guaranteed income. And that guaranteed income at a minimum should cover their paychecks or their non-discretionary expenses, the things they can't live without, their housing, their food, their clothing, those things that we have to have in order to stay in retirement should be covered with a guaranteed paycheck. And he defined those guaranteed paychecks as Social Security, pensions, and guaranteed income products that you might find from specific types of annuities. So that would be where we would get that guaranteed income. But we know with Social Security, there's potentially issues that might cause a reduction in the future of that Social Security benefit. When it comes to your pension, only some of it's guaranteed by the Pension Benefit Guarantee Corporation in your state. When it comes to annuities, the guaranteed income stream is only as good as the company that's backing it. And so, for instance, my mom has an annuity she's had since 2007, and it's had an 8% guaranteed growth rate, but she has to use that for income. So now, today, she's getting close to a point where she might turn that on for a guaranteed income payment for the rest of her life. And that is still only as good as the insurance company that's backing it, and ultimately the state guarantee. But really, it's about that company. How strong are they? So these people should be looking into the rating agencies first, the S&P, Moody's, and I think Comdex, COMDEX, is a really good resource to define how strong the company you're working with really is.
We're going to address an email question from Dondria in Goshen. I have stocks with substantial gains. Well, I want to sell and lock in my gains. I don't want to pay the taxes. My wife and I are in our late 70s. Should we just hold on to them for step up in basis to the kids?
Well, Dondria, that's a difficult question to answer from this distance, from being able to not really analyze all the different aspects of your financial life. But I'll give you this. Yes, you could hold on to those things and wait on a step up in basis. However, don't let the tax tail wag the dog. So you need to be making decisions that are going to secure your financial future, even if it might cause some short-term pain because you have to pay some additional taxes. It would be a worse decision to take a large amount of risk, say with one particular stock or one particular investment. Now you have everything in one place that you're depending on for retirement. You end up not selling it and it goes to zero, or it loses half of its value, and now you can't stay in retirement. You would have been better off paying the 15 or 20% in long-term capital gains taxes by selling that asset. Now, that being said, what we'll do with some families that have these large positions is we'll manage that tax burden year over year, and we'll just put together a capital gains budget. You might actually be able to sell portions of this position every year as long as you stay in what's now the 12% tax bracket, up to about $80,000 in taxable income. You're actually able to sell assets in that bracket at a 0% tax rate, and then you might see a 15% tax rate or a 20% tax rate. So evaluate that and put together a budget that says this is how much we're going to liquidate, or we're comfortable with liquidating every single year as we start to build something that feels a little bit more solid and more secure than we had before. Because as we've said in the past, it's about having peace of mind at this stage in your life, whether it's about paying off your mortgage or what type of income strategy to put in place. You need to be making decisions now that allow you to have happiness, fulfillment, and peace of mind, even if they cost you a little bit. And that might be in the form of taxes in this instance.
And if you'd like to have a question answered by Casey, just go to retirewithpurpose.com. You'll see where you can request your question right there. You can also request a consultation with a member of the Howard Bailey team, or you can do what I hope you'll do now, and that is pick up the phone and call the number on your screen and request that complimentary review of your retirement plan. A chance to have someone who knows what they're doing look carefully at exactly what plans you have in place. No judgments here, just information for you on: are there taxes and fees that you can avoid legally? Is there a plan in place for a long-term income that you cannot outlive, something that is so critical to a successful retirement? And many other factors we'll review and give you an idea of just how well you're set up for retirement. So jump on the phone, call the number on your screen, be one of the next 10 people, and you can request a complimentary retirement review. Sure hope you will. It's a good step toward living that retirement you've always dreamed of. All right, here's our question of the day, and it is: what percentage can you expect your retirement spending to increase, to change, by the time you're 85 if you are currently 65 and spend $50,000 per year? The answer when we come back.
At Howard Bailey Financial, every dollar has a purpose. We call it the purpose-based retirement. A certified financial planner will help you decide what you need your retirement money to do for you. We put together a written plan that puts your dollars exactly where you want them to be. And we put every dollar to work to maximize your retirement efficiency. For a higher level of insight and care, choose the purpose-based retirement from Howard Bailey Financial. Call us now to set a complimentary consultation.
Hope you'll check out Casey's podcast. Just go to the Retire with Purpose website /podcast. So retirewithpurpose.com/podcast. The topic we're about to jump into is episode 11, and it's also part of our question of the day. We asked about what percentage of you can expect your retirement spending to change by the time you're 85 if you're currently 65 and spending $50,000 per year? It's an important question.
It's an extremely important question, and one that most people get wrong. And I'd say not just most individuals, but most financial advisors are getting this wrong. And the answer is actually a 20% decline. It's not an increase. And on average, most advisors or individuals are going to say, well, if I spend $50,000 a day, then I'm going to spend $100,000 down the future due to inflation.
Yeah.
But David Blanchett of Morningstar and also Dr. Weade Pfau's research into retirement spending, and I talked to Weade Pfau a little bit about this the other day, and he said, some of the most impactful research and best research was out there was done by major banking institutions that had all of the records of withdrawals from their bank accounts. They could see where retirees' spending transitions occurred and kind of how those trends happened over time. And it wasn't actually a 20% increase, it was actually a 20% decline. And this is just now starting to get incorporated into major financial planning and retirement research out there today, which has huge implications, because if we overestimate the inflation rate, we either say, well, you can't retire, you have to postpone retirement, reduce the amount you spend every single year, or we might find that we can actually take on less risk than we are, because if we overestimate inflation, you might be taking on a greater deal of risk to achieve a greater rate of return that you actually don't need. And this is what's actually going on. So if we look at what inflation rates do to a spending level of, say, $40,000 a year, we can see how big of a difference and how big a jump we make from, say, 2% inflation to 3%, 4%, and 5% inflation adjustments. If we just pick 3%, which is kind of the standard number, that's the orange line on our screen, and we can see it takes us from $40,000 to about $100,000 in annual expenses over a 30-year period, and that would be pretty discouraging for a lot of retirees, and that's why we have to take into consideration the three phases that we go through as we step into retirement. That is, one, our go-go years, then our slow-go years, and then we have our no-go years. And that's broken apart into kind of 3 decades. Our first decade, our second decade, and ultimately our third decade of life. And this is what's actually happening during those periods of time. We're very active during that period of time that's typically age 65 to 74. We're going on vacations. We're going out to eat with friends. We're maybe driving 2 cars. We have a larger house. We're living an active lifestyle that that becomes more passive during that period of 75 to 84. And then we need more support on the back end, those later years, 85 plus, where typically we're seeing medical expenses, for instance, start to spike and bring us back to those original spending levels. To further explain that point, we can see from Blanchett's research and Weade-Fow's research that our typical spending pattern is going to be on a continually down line. But then if we have some unexpected expenditures when it comes to health, that can bring us back up to our original spending level. And this is why they've largely discussed recommending a level spending pattern, or at least a projection of level spending into your retirement years and on through those later years of retirement, coining the term the retirement spending smile. So on average, an individual that's spending $100,000 a year over the first few years of retirement till age 80, they're going to see that decrease in expenses from $100,000 to $75,000 in expenses, and then it's going to start peaking back up to get us back to that original $100,000 in expenses. So if we adjust that for inflation, we see a relatively flat line of the real experience that the average retiree is going to have is not a 3 or 4% average inflation adjustment every year, but more than likely it's going to be a level income. And the more income you have, the more this is really going to impact you. If you have $150,000 in annual expenses, then you have a lot of discretionary expenses that are going to go away more quickly than someone that's spending $40,000 a year. A person that's spending $30,000, $40,000 a year has a lot of expenses that aren't going to go away as they get into those slow go and no go years. They don't have as many discretionary expenses, so inflation is going to impact them a little bit more. So you have to ask yourself, are you projecting your expenses to go from $40,000 to $60,000 to $100,000 into the future? Are you overestimating inflation and in return taking on more risk than you actually need to? There's nothing more important than getting those estimates accurate, whether it's your expenses, your budget, your inflation, your investment returns. Using the appropriate numbers ultimately going to allow you to retire, or maybe force you to postpone retirement in the future. And getting this right, in most instances, is probably going to allow you to actually retire earlier than you had planned.
I think that's one of the most important elements in working with a professional, someone minded like your team, because you know to think those. You think that way. You ask those questions that the average Joe is not going to do.
Well, we've got Todd Cressiter coming up from Financial Mentor. He was one of the original investment educators out there, started in the late 90s after retiring as a hedge fund manager. And he got on the show to discuss some of these inputs like inflation, like investment returns, and why the traditional retirement method, the traditional retirement calculators are flawed. And we spent a little bit of time on inflation. You know, it's working with the right experts that are staying up to date on the existing trends and the newest and latest research that's going to get you to a point where you can have a more honed retirement plan, and you can ultimately have more confidence that can allow you to spend those hard-earned dollars.
Well, if you'd like to find out whether or not your retirement plan is maybe behind that curve, here's a good opportunity. Be one of the next 10 people to call the number on your screen and request a complimentary retirement review with a member of the Howard Bailey team. A sit-down meeting where we'll review exactly what's going on in your portfolio. Are there taxes and fees that you might be able to escape legally? Is there an opportunity for you to make a provision for that healthcare spending you just heard about that's not going to be too painful today but will pay off in the future? And what about a lifetime income you can't outlive? All very important and a good reason to pick up the phone and be one of the next 10 people to request this complimentary retirement review. All right, we are back next week. We will see you then.